We're back with the latest on the fight to end the coronavirus pandemic. Vaccines typically take years to develop, but researchers are tirelessly pushing with the goal of having one ready in a matter of months. Now, the University of Pittsburgh has announced they may have a potential coronavirus vaccine, and they want the FDA to give them permission to begin human testing. And the NIH has already begun their first human trials on a potential vaccine, which is key. Now, there are over 50 potential vaccines already being developed worldwide. And the Bill Gates Foundation is funding factories for 7 different candidates in hopes of distributing this internationally as widely and as quickly as possible. Joining us now via Zoom to talk more about the race for a COVID-19 vaccine is my good friend and ABC News' chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jen Ashton. Dr. Ashton, first, I want to ask you about your brother. He's a doctor. He got diagnosed with COVID-19 after helping out in the ER of his hospital, which is pretty common. How is he doing?
Thanks for asking, Mehmet. Evan is a surgeon. So as you said, he was helping out in the emergency room at his hospital when he probably got infected. He was confirmed to be positive with COVID-19 about a week ago. He had some high fever, shortness of breath. It went away, and then the fever came back. He is taking hydroxychloroquine, which is experimental. And he's home. Hopefully, he'll be getting better by the day, but it's scary.
Well, I wish him the best. When you're allowed to, whatever that is, give him a big hug.
I will.
One thing that would protect brave healthcare workers is a vaccine. I want you all to understand why a vaccine is crucial to ending this war for good. A vaccine would expose your healthy body to material that mimics the virus, looks just like it, but it wouldn't actually infect you. It's strong enough to activate your immune system, but not hurt you. This would cause your cells to develop antibodies specific to the coronavirus that would connect to the virus directly and prevent it from attaching to your healthy cells. These antibodies would also signal your immune system to destroy the virus cells. And then if you catch the real coronavirus, your immune system would recognize it immediately and destroy it before you ever got sick. Now, Dr. Ashton, what do you make of the race for a vaccine and these aggressive timelines that are being thrown out there?
Well, I think it's exciting, and it's definitely a cause for hope. But as you and I both know, the timeline is still the timeline. It takes about 12 to 18 months start to finish, and that's if everything goes perfectly. There were a couple of things that were in our favor, so to speak, with this novel coronavirus. Number one, China did sequence the virus and release that DNA sequence. That's like its fingerprint very early on. That enabled labs and researchers all around the world to start working on a vaccine. When I was down at the NIH in February with Dr. Tony Fauci, he was showing me the NIH development for this vaccine. There are 2 clinical trials, phase 1 clinical trials that are going on right now. Those are usually about 3 months, very small, about 45 people done just for safety. And then we'll move on to larger trials that really will evaluate also safety, but dose and efficacy and how much of an immune response the vaccine can give us.
So from what we know now, is the coronavirus mutating the way the seasonal flu does? In other words, are we going to need annual vaccines like we do for the flu?
Well, when we talk about an RNA virus, and coronaviruses come from that family, they're prone to mutation. And by some accounts, it is thought to be mutating approximately every 15 days, which sounds concerning. But the good news is the mutations have been benign. They don't appear to be making this virus more deadly or more contagious.
So the University of Pittsburgh scientists have announced that they've developed a potential vaccine that would use a new technology. It's called microneedle arrays. These are tiny little Band-Aids with spikes in them. So Dr. Ashton, why are these researchers optimistic about this novel approach? It's the first time that I've heard of it.
I thought it was incredible technology. It literally looks like almost a little stamp. And these microscopic needles go in, they dissolve in your skin, so they can be administered that way. What I loved about this technology is that it doesn't have to be refrigerated or frozen. So when you think about the race to deliver a vaccine, yes, we have to prove it's safe, then we have to prove it's effective, and then we have to scale up manufacturing and production to the tune of possibly 150 million doses just here in this country. That's what people are looking at right now. So I think it's smart to look that far down the road and say, can we scale up and produce hundreds of millions of doses? And potentially with this technology, the microneedling delivery, it would be a little easier. But again, there are so many trials to race for this vaccine.
Doc, Tasha, thanks as always for your wonderful advice. Stay safe.
You too, Mehmet.
Coming up, is there already a vaccine available that countries like Japan and South Korea, with far fewer deaths, have been given for years that protects them from COVID-19? I'm talking to a vaccine developer on the front lines of the fight to save the world from the unspeakable death tolls we've been seeing. We're back with the latest on the race for a COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Peter Hotez is one of the researchers working night and day to develop a vaccine to put an end to COVID-19. He's also Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine and co-director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development. He joins us now via Zoom from his office in Houston. Dr. Hotez, there are emerging headlines pointing to a preliminary study showing a correlation between the tuberculosis vaccine, which is mandatory in countries like Japan and South Korea, and lower incidence of death from COVID-19. What do you make of that?
I think it's still pretty early to tell. I think the rationale for it is not because it's called BCG and it actually stimulates the immune system, and maybe because of that side effect of the vaccine that's meant as a tuberculosis vaccine, but maybe because of that side effect of immune stimulation, it's having some benefit. But I think, part of it is the fact that BCG is used primarily in low and middle income countries, and this virus has yet to race through those places. So I think, unfortunately, it's just a matter of time before we start to see this pandemic move significantly into India, Bangladesh, and sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. And then I think that relationship may fall apart. We're already seeing this, for instance, in Ecuador now. We're seeing horrific pictures out of Guayaquil in Ecuador where, bodies are piling up on the streets. It's just devastating. And there they have pretty good use of BCG in Ecuador, or at least they did up as far as I know recently. So we'll see how that goes. It may not hold up.
Well, it's tantalizing, and I've heard what you said, but do you think there's any role for Americans to get this TB shot in case it turns out to be helpful?
And not yet. You're going to hear a lot about some. I think there's a lot of promise potentially of repurposing existing drugs and biologics like BCG, because they're already ready and we already know their safety profile. And it would be great if we could repurpose them from this COVID-19 epidemic, but we really need good studies. And I would put BCG in kind of a similar category as hydroxychloroquine. There's some tantalizing small studies that have looked at, but there are also some tantalizing studies that say, well, maybe it's not working as well as we might thought. So we really need those larger studies to really pin this down.
All right, now you're tirelessly working on two different vaccines right now that you hope could be used around the world. It's a two-pronged approach. If you don't mind, help us understand this. When do you hope to have your vaccine ready for public use?
Well, right now we have two recombinant protein vaccines. One was actually developed to the first SARS. So if you remember, SARS-1 came out in 2003. It caused a pretty serious epidemic in China and Toronto, Canada. We had a program for the last 10 years for coronavirus vaccine development. We developed one and had it manufactured in collaboration with Walter Reed Army Institute of Research and the New York Blood Center and Galveston National Lab. It's now already manufactured. Could we repurpose it for this one? There are some strong similarities between SARS-1, that one in 2003, and the new one, COVID-19, which is caused by the SARS-2 virus. So we're looking at that and hoping to accelerate that into clinical trials. And then we're designing one specific for COVID-19. One of the advantages of the vaccines that we're developing is they're extremely low cost. And they're recombinant protein technology. That's the same technology used for the hepatitis B vaccine. So it's an established technology. It's low cost. It has some advantages to suggest that could be a very important global health vaccine. So we've been talking about the problem of this virus moving into places like India and Bangladesh and Africa, and maybe vaccine is going to be specifically targeted for that.
We've been hearing a lot about novel approaches being developed for potential vaccines. I mean, every day there's a new concept out there. And yet you just mentioned these more traditional forms of vaccines that might be going in clinical trials. Is it just nostalgia? Why do you want these older technologies also examined?
Well, what you really want is a portfolio of new innovations together with the old established technologies. Because at this point, this virus is moving so quickly and it's a new virus agent. We don't really know which vaccine is going to prove both to be the most effective at preventing COVID-19 and the safest.
All right, you're a world expert. Your best estimate, what month next year will we have a vaccine?
Oh boy, that's the toughest question. Dr. Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's been my mentor for the last several decades, ever since I was an MD PhD student in New York, says a year to 18 months. That would be a very fast timeline. That would be almost unprecedented. We're going to try to get it out there as quickly as possible. And let's remember how this works. This COVID-19 pandemic, it's not going to completely disappear by the summer. It could be around for a while. The good news is we're starting to see the benefits of U.S. investment of science. We're getting a whole array of technologies out there. So our vaccine would be one component of many vaccines. That's probably the longest time horizon, but we're doing things right now, like getting convalescent antibody therapy out the door. We're looking at some repurposed new drugs like hydroxychloroquine that you've spoken about. We'll evaluate whether that one works. So you are going to see a bunch of new drugs and biologics come online in the next few weeks. That's the benefit of American science. The vaccine is probably the one that's the furthest out in terms of timeline.
Thank you very much. Get back to work. I know you got lots to do.
Thank you, and thank you for all you're doing to raise awareness about COVID-19. We really appreciate it, Dr. Oz.
Well, bless you. When we come back, I'm talking to a doctor who survived Ebola. He's revealing what he says we need to do to win the battle on the front lines. We're closely monitoring the spread of the potentially deadly coronavirus so you can stay healthy and in the know. Follow me on Facebook and also on YouTube, where I'll be sharing the latest coronavirus developments each day. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss anything, and remember to check back often to see what's new.